Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. If everyone could come up close, we're going to get started. So welcome to the Building the Blocks of Culture during Web Summit Vancouver, our first Web Summit. Before I begin, I want to recognize that we're gathered here at 825 Pacific Street, which is situated between the burial grounds of the Sememchuks and the shores of the Eilishon, on the unceded lands and waters of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. As we explore new forms of digital infrastructure and data innovation today, we do so with deep respect and honor for the Indigenous peoples who've stewarded data sovereignty movements, especially here in this region. Their work establishing frameworks for community control over collective data inspires our efforts to build more equitable digital futures through well-designed protocols. So please join me in welcoming Manuel Axel Strain, who will give us a welcome to this region. Manuel is a two-spirit artist from the lands and the waters of the Musqueam.
Can you hear me? Siam Nasieya Anta Manuel Axel Strain Tanitsanach Ho Musqueam Amit Seb Kwaquilim. So I just said in the downriver dialect of Hunkamidim my name and that I'm from Musqueam and that you're all welcome here. And so for generations, long before any of us was around, people from other places would come here and the Musqueam would send a representative to welcome you all. And I was told that we are a yes people, and that's how we have this beautiful city here, because we said yes. Yes, come ashore. And I'm very grateful to be here today. I really admire the work that 221A and the other hosting organizations are presenting today. I think a big thing I was thinking about on the way here was this concept of data sovereignty. And I couldn't really come up with any answers. It was more just questions I had. And the biggest one was, how does this concept of data sovereignty interact with Indigenous sovereignty, especially in a place like here in Eilishon, is where we're close to, in the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh land. How does that relate or interlap or overlap, I should say, with each other? And how can we create a harmonious relationship between these concepts of place and a virtual place? And like I said, I don't have the answers, it's just the questions. And the other thing I'm thinking about too with this new technology is oral tradition, because I'll say just a little bit about myself to start this off, this oral tradition idea. So my father is from Musqueam First Nation, and his mother was Helen Point of Musqueam First Nation, and her mother was Tina Cole Ni Cortez of the Squamish Nation. And then my mom's from the interior of British Columbia, the Secwepemc and Syilx Nations, and her parents, her mom is from a place called Nkamipalaks and the Sukhanakwin, the northern Okanagan, and the Syilx Nation. And her dad is from a place called Chuchua, part of Simk First Nation, which is part of the larger Secwepemcúlecw, and on and on and on. And so I say this because a long time ago, my great-great-grandfather, he was referred to as the Great One, was the CM of my family when the settlers really settled here. And when he introduced himself, he would name 16 generations before him. So I just did 3. So you can imagine how long an introduction would take and how ridiculous it would be to stand there and name 16 generations prior to you. And I say that, and I wanted to talk about that because the story of who I am is so important, as the story of each one of you is so important. And when I think about AI or new social media platforms that are they're really, we're being gaslit collectively, I think. Our reality is constantly being questioned. And so the other question I had was, when we think about these concepts of oral tradition and telling our stories of who we are as people, how can we preserve that with integrity and authenticity? because that's part of who we are as Coast Salish people, or we say Chalmoch people from this land. And I think the interesting thing is this is like 2218, it does a lot with art and culture, and so I'm also thinking of the rights of artists during these conversations as well. I myself am an artist. So that's kind of just what I wanted to share today. It's all I really had on my heart and my mind. But you're all welcome here. I think it's wonderful that this is an international event and there's people all over the world that will maybe become familiar with Musqueam and Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh, which is what Vancouver actually is. So I'll say Haichka and raise my hands to you. I do have to make a phone call, so I'm going to step out, but I'll come back and I'm happy to listen. Thank you.
Can we get another round of applause for Manny? So, thank you, Manny, for grounding us in a place of purpose. Welcome, everyone, to this special showcase at the intersection of culture, technology, and community stewardship. I'm Benny from Future Primitive, and we're thrilled to co-host this event with our collaborators at 221A and Brinc. Today isn't just about a demonstration of technology. It's about showing how this region is pathfinding new approaches to digital innovation with methods that put creators and communities at the center. Let me give you a quick overview of what we have in store this afternoon. We've gathered some of the most exciting projects in the fair data ecosystem, and you'll be able to explore their demonstrations in the lobby. Clio X is showcasing privacy-preserving AI infrastructure for archives, enabling institutions to participate in AI development without exposing sensitive information. Pentagon Group presents PenXR 360, digital experiences for the decentralized web. And Repo Labs, a decentralized model context protocol, MCP, network, connecting AI agents to data providers. And lastly, Perma, which is what we've been working on in that corner, a social camera that forms new friendships by capturing and exchanging moments that matter. We'll also hear from 221A and Brinc about their Fair Data Hub and Accelerator, and the upcoming call for teams with remarks from Jesse McKee, Samir Pirani, followed by a panel discussion on fair data, social networks, creators, and IP with Jayden Windle, our CTO of Future Primitive, Emma Johnson from Story and PIP Labs, Vivek Singh, director of Kernel. We'll then be treated to a special music performance by Forrest Mortifee before opening up for our reception. Let me now invite Jesse McKee from 221A and Samir Pirani from Brinc to share more about the Fair Data Hub and Accelerator that's helping to steward this ecosystem.
Thanks, Benny, and thanks, Manuel, for welcoming us and getting us going. For those that don't know, I'm Jesse McKee. I'm the head of digital strategy here at 221A. And for those who are new to Vancouver, 221A, we're a cultural charity that's been operating and developing cultural infrastructure for nearly 2 decades now. So in the past couple of years, we started to extend that cultural infrastructure remit into the digital realm through initiatives like the Fair Data Hub and Accelerator that we're here to tell you about today. So as AI rapidly transforms our economy and cultural industries, we have an unprecedented opportunity to shape how data is valued, governed, and used. Through collaboration with Brinc, we're creating pathways for creators, teams, and technologists to build the infrastructure that enables cultural actors to collectively steward their digital assets. Artists and creators can maintain sovereignty over their work, and communities can participate meaningfully in the AI economy. So this isn't about resistance to technology, it's about building better technology. Technology that recognizes data as a distributed asset, one that can enable democratic governance, and that ensures value flows back to its creators and owners. This work is taking root here at 825 Pacific, in our co-working floor, in our studios above, in our offices. But we also have a vision for a future property wholly dedicated to this work and to this mission. So more on that in the coming years. The teams you'll hear from today are taking this approach. They're building the protocols and the platforms and the tools that are going to make a fair data economy possible. And so we're just getting started. Samir, I'll hand it over to you, and you can tell us a bit more about the program.
Perfect. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate that. As mentioned, my name is Samir. I am the Managing Director for Brinc North America. Just want to give you, before we start talking about the program, just a little bit of history about Brinc itself. Yeah, so Brinc is roughly about 10 years old, and it originally formed out of Hong Kong. Since then, we've expanded globally with offices throughout APAC, the APAC region, in China, in India, in MENA, and now our expansion into North America. We started getting into Web3 back in 2019. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a group called Animoca Brands. They invested into us and deployed capital through our program to accelerate the teams that they were interested in investing in. Our focus is on the early stage, pre-seed to seed stage. We provide capital, mentorship, and guidance, and our goal is to get you funded at a seed stage level within 3 months. Sorry. So the reason why we're here is that I don't think in Canada there's enough support for early stage founders. I'm a 4-time founder myself, raised most of my capital externally, and I think that this is a very common situation for a lot of the founders that I've spoken to as well. And unfortunately, most Canadians are, as in the investor side, are risk averse and will happily support later stage companies, but there isn't much support on the early side. And that's the gap that we want to be able to fill and support locally. Beyond that, the fair data aspect of the reason why we're doing this is something that we're personally passionate about. I, as a former artist turned founder turned VC, have had my data stolen multiple times and reused, repurposed, or even raised capital on based on things that I haven't been able to release in the public. So this is a very personal mission for me as to the reason why we're involved. And we're excited to have that opportunity to showcase the talent that Canada does have on a global stage. One of the key reasons why we started to join our forces with 221A, because we knew we needed some community engagement locally. 221A has been embedded within the art and culture community in Vancouver and beyond for multiple years and has done some amazing work to showcase and promote various artists in various spaces. We're extremely excited to work with 221A as they've been able to open up a lot of the doors for us locally and being provided as this is the official co-working space for the Accelerator program as well. So lastly, I do encourage you guys to come and chat. We are opening up the scouting program as of next week. The program is set to launch in September of this year, and we're looking to bring on at least 8 to 12 teams. We will be providing capital up to $250,000 US per team, including acceleration. As mentioned before, our key metric that we want to achieve is being able to provide north of $2 million in seed funding post-acceleration. We have a 78% success rate, which is extremely rare for an accelerator to achieve this, and we have an extreme amount of experience in the Web3 space. We have about 77 different investments in this space, and in addition, we also offer a token asset advisory service attached to the program to ensure the success of our teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. Now we're going to dive a bit deeper, and we're going to invite 3 leaders who are actively building this kind of infrastructure today. So please join me in welcoming Jayden, Emma, and Vivek.
We're so far away.
Okay, so before we begin on the panel discussion, just wanted to set the tone. Oh, yeah, turn your mics on. Make sure the green light's on. Everyone Okay. So our panel discussion today, we're going to be discussing kind of a general theme that you're all working on, but it's around creators, IP, and social media as the big conversation topic. So each panelist will have about 5 minutes to present their work, introduce themselves, and then I'll have a question for each. And we won't do Q&A here, but we'll have a reception afterwards, so please hold your questions, approach me or the panelists afterwards, and hopefully we can have a great conversation to continue the evening. So why don't we get going? I'll introduce Jayden. Jayden is CTO of Future Primitive, instrumental in creating foundational protocols like token-bound accounts. Welcome Emma Johnson, ecosystem marketing lead at PIP Labs, working on Story. And Vivek, welcome as the director of Kernel, an education initiative that grew out of Gitcoin. So let's begin with Jayden. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your work, where you're coming from, and kind of what your background is?
For sure. I'm Jayden. I've been working in startups for a very long time, in software for a very long time, and in crypto for a long time in crypto terms. And a lot of people are scared when they hear the term crypto, but really what I mean is tools for sovereignty. And we've built a lot of things under that banner, under Future Primitive, the company. We've built some very low-level tools to help people build new things with these tools for sovereignty. And now we're trying to get those tools into the hands of as many people as possible through the form of a consumer social app called Perma. You'll hear us talk about Perma as a social camera that forms friendships, or a cozy place for your photos and friends on the internet. What we're building is a new social space from first principles on the internet, and taking inspiration from the past in order to build the future. There's a very uniquely Vancouver story that started Perma. In the 70s, there was a group of artists in this city who had a bunch of friends all over the world, and they went out to them and they said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had a network through which we could share the things that we create, the art, the photography, all of these things that we're spending our time on? Wouldn't it be great if we could just share them with each other? So they wrote to all of their artist friends around the world, said, hey, write back to us with your name, your mailing address, and a little blurb about the type of art you would like to receive. They did. They had all their artist friends reach back out. They compiled it into a book. They called it the International Image Exchange Directory. They mailed that book back out to every artist who contributed. And with that action, they created the world's first social media network in 1970, a totally peer-to-peer system where you would just create your art, flip through the book, find somebody who's wanted to receive your art based on their description, and send it to them in the mail. And that model of social is very pure and very simple and very sovereign, and very different than the social that we see in the world around us today. What we want to do with Perma is bring that same model for social to the internet age, to the tools that we have now for sovereignty on the internet. And that has involved a lot of hard stuff, a lot of building things from the ground up around this really simple idea to bring it to life. Things like using the blockchain as a means of creating consensus, finding a shared truth about what exists. Things like using NFTs as profiles so that you have control over how you show up in the world and how you share yourself and your content with others. Building ways to keep the safe space by using reputation and trust-building mechanics. Decentralizing the way that we store things. There's a lot of hard problems that underpin this. And that's what we've been working on under the banner of Perma, but with the simple goal of creating a new space on the internet for photos and friends.
Vivek?
Thanks for having me all, and I'm really grateful to be here. The project I've been working on for the last 5 years is called Kernel, and some from the software side will recognize Kernel as the root of an operating system. We like to think of it as the starting point for any idea and an incubation for an idea to take form. And really, the simple framing that I wanted to provide from our side is that learning and teaching start to intertwine to make, we think, the most interesting types of networks. When you have a network that is oriented around these two activities, you end up with something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And that's something that we've tried to understand better in the way that kernel operates. When Jayden was talking about the image bank, it reminded me of one of these principles of pro-social game design that we think about a lot, which is when you have each person contributing and participating, you have the possibility for more interesting types of value to flow. And we wanted to share a quote from somebody who is inspiring to us and how we've designed the kernel educational environment. It's by a man named Ivan Illich, who wrote a book called Deschooling Society. And it posits on networks that the most radical alternative to school would be a network or service which gave each human the same opportunity to share their current concern with others motivated by the same concern. So the idea is, without the constraint of a curriculum matching a teacher and a student at a moment where each of them is highly motivated to understand something new. And when I think about fair data, the thing that I wonder about, especially as it relates to networks that might generate fair data, to me, I think a lot about this interplay between teaching, learning, and the freshness that might come through that style of process where you have this back and forth that leads to new information. We have some simple orientations around kernel that try to weave together that type of a learning environment, and all of it effectively is customs that we hope lead to this type of learning and generate new types of ideas. So if you're interested in learning more about kernel, just know that the main orientation that it's going to be asked is, what is it that you're currently trying to pursue a greater understanding of? And our goal is to surround you with places where that idea might take form that you're not expecting, and take you to somewhere that's new and is fresh. So that's where my hope is fair data can take us.
Great, thanks. Emma.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us, and super cool to hear about your projects as well. I'm going to try and squeeze in a really quick boot camp on IP, which is really what Story is focused on. We are a layer 1 blockchain focused specifically on IP. And I just want to dive into this quickly because I think a lot of folks have this kind of assumption that IP really is dusty lawyers in courtrooms, and it's so much more than that. IP is encompassing of memes, brands, scientific data, the entire entertainment business, music, data, all of the inputs that go into training an AI model. It's an asset class that's really worth upwards of $70 trillion. And the current IP system that we use to think about this and to manage IP, it was developed at the time of the printing press. So it is fantastic for traditional media and print books, and it's pretty bad for the world that we live in now, where content is created and shared and remixed at the click of a button on the internet, and not to mention used to train all these kind of large language models, OpenAI and such. Speaking of that, actually, I think many of us in the room have probably seen some of the headlines around the lawsuits for these bigger AI companies that they're facing due to copyright infringement. And I think it's easy to chalk up AI companies as the bad guy in the room, but there's really no feasible way for them to license all of the IP that they're training on top of properly, because this system is so archaic. At the same time, you have this asset class that's worth trillions of dollars that's very challenging to register and transact in. So you or I are probably not registering our IP, and we probably wouldn't benefit from it either. Really only the top kind of 1 or 0.1% of IP owners really benefit from going through that very arduous, expensive process. It's the Marvels of the world, it's the Disneys. At the same time, to tap into that as a financial asset class is also very challenging. Right now, if I wanted to go find a way, however hard I tried, to own a piece of my favorite song or my favorite film, it would be very challenging for me to do so, likely impossible. So there's kind of 3 things that we're doing at Story. The first one is to simplify the IP registration and licensing process to be very simple and delightful. I think a great analogy here that we like to think about is while Spotify might face its own host of challenges, it really created a simple way for people to pay royalty fees to artists. And it's simple, it's sticky, it's delightful, it's fun. I don't think twice about paying $12.99 or $20.99, however much Spotify is a month. And so that's kind of how we think about that process for Story from the product level. In that process, folks can either opt into or out of having their data, or let's say that's synonymous with IP in Story's world, to be allowed to be used for AI training data. So at the same time, we're creating the biggest, most robust permission data set for AI companies to be able to train on with permission. The second layer is we have a couple of apps in the ecosystem that are focused on kind of connecting the traditional IP landscape and this, what we call the programmable IP landscape. And so they're actually raising money to acquire these very big, iconic pieces of IP, and they're bringing them onto Story. And what that does is it allows our application of financial applications to have a new asset class to compose with. So, for example, we have one project called Aria, and they're actually raising funds to acquire the rights to a huge catalog of famous songs. That's like Miley Cyrus songs, Justin Bieber, and folks who hold their token then earn yield in the form of the royalty streams that those accrue. That's just one example, but we also have projects on the ecosystem that allow for lending and borrowing against IP, staking on IP, and so that's kind of that connective tissue between the two IP landscapes. The third one is we also have a very robust ecosystem of applications that span DeFi to creator tooling to AI applications. And the way that I like to think about this is offering the everyday creator a turnkey way to extend the lifetime value of their IP. I think we saw some very interesting examples of the tokenization of IP around that kind of NFT cycle, and it still exists, and frankly, I'm still very optimistic and interested in that. But if you think about that behavior, it's very small and it's very confined. It's, I'm a creator, I bring media on chain, I hope somebody likes that enough to collect it, and seen. Maybe there's a secondary sale, but that's probably it. So the two kind of things that we think about at Story are register once and monetize everywhere. So if I bring my IP onto Story, people can create merch, they can launch meme coins with my IP, they can remix my IP, and all of the revenue that's generated that's kind of set on my terms flow back to the original IP owners and attribution without anyone having to do anything. So yeah, I guess just to take a step back and wrap things up at a high level, what we're trying to do is really upgrade the IP system for the age of AI that we live in right now, and also democratize IP, access to IP as an asset class.
Great, thank you. Yes, IP is a very hot topic these days around AI. There was an IP summit just before Web Summit that a lot of the startups went to, and it was packed.
How did
it was
we miss
hard to
that?
get into.
Crazy.
So it was really exciting to see. But Jayden, let's start. I have a question for you. Let's start with reimagining creator sovereignty. So I feel like that's kind of what you guys have done for this emerging world of generative and agentic AI. So how can protocols like yours, token-bound accounts, or ERC 6551, ensure that creators maintain agency over their work? And what does that sovereignty look like in practice?
Yeah, I think sovereignty in the context of creation is about ownership over the way that what you create shows up in the world and acts in the world and persists in the world. And control over the ability of others to interact with it, or the ability of the world to interact with that piece of content. In the case of ERC 6551 and token-bound accounts and NFTs and all these kind of tools that we have for sovereignty, I think the through line is most things on the internet you're incapable of owning. As you were saying, you're incapable of owning your favorite songs. But it gets much more personal than that. The things that you interact with on a daily basis that you probably feel like are yours, your social media accounts, everything you've ever posted on the internet, your backup of photos, those are things that feel like yours, but are often not actually yours. They're a row in somebody else's database that you have a very fragile social contract with, where they give you access to it as long as it's good for them, and you give them access to it as long as it's good for you. But as we've seen in a world where internet economics play out at scale, those very fragile social contracts we have are very fragile. They can be broken very quickly. The things that you thought were stable and solid and secure, the institutions of the internet or the institutions that were around for a very long time before the internet, are actually having a really hard time upholding these social contracts. And so figuring out a way to ensure that we can create objects on the internet, we can create these new social contracts on the internet that can last even if the new institutions and the old institutions can't maintain them. That's really vitally important. And NFTs and token-bound accounts, which really are just a way to do more with your NFTs, to take it from this kind of flash-in-a-pan thing that you own once and then seen, to something that can be changed over time, that can be used, that can interact with the world around it. It's these tools that give us the ability to create things that we really own and that will last forever on the internet in the way that we want to see them last, without relying on somebody else to uphold a social contract. That's a really, really powerful thing. And we have these tools. What we want to do with Perma is put those tools in the hands of not just the people who are really nerdy and like playing around with weird speculative assets on the internet, but put it into the hands of people who just want to use things on their phone, just want to experience the internet like they're used to experiencing it, to give them the same sovereignty that weird nerds on the internet already have. That's something that can be really, really impactful. In terms of the AI angle, generative content and agents on the internet, whether or not that's a good thing, whether or not we should be trying to stop content from being ingested, I don't think is the really interesting part of that conversation to me. The interesting part of the conversation to me is that the internet has changed and the nature of creativity has changed pretty significantly. The bar to creativity is steadily dropping, meaning that many, many more people can create things. And the audience for what you're creating is very different. You used to create just for people. Like you used to create just for a very small subset of things. If you flash back 50 years and you were creating things in the image exchange directory, you were just creating them for a handful of people and you sent them right to them. Now you're creating for everybody on the internet, but now you're also creating for AI models. Like they're reading, they're seeing your content. Whether or not that's good or bad, that's an entirely new audience. And the way that you create and the way that you can speak to the world can be amplified through that. And there are going to be many users of apps, many consumers of content that are not people. What does the world look like that? And what does it look like to create for that? I think what I really want to see is, are there applications of that where it feels sovereign and it feels free, where it doesn't feel like what you're creating is being stifled or stolen, but it feels like what you're creating is amplified and has new audiences? And I think the tools that we're building for sovereignty are the first step. We need things to be owned. We need things to be permanent. We need you to be able to control the way that you show up in the world, to figure out how we interact with this new audience, this new class of consumers of things that we create.
Great. Thanks, Jayden. Vivek, you've taken a unique approach with Kernel, focusing on education and finding value within your cohort. So how does Kernel enable people to actually learn that value recognition, discovery, creation in these new ecosystems? And what kind of outcomes have you seen from that process?
I think the thing that is most poking around in my head right now is something that we wrote a few years ago. It was called sign.kernel.community is where it is, and it was called the signature economies. And in many ways, it was a response to a dialogue that's happening around the word ownership and the way that that word is changing. And I choose this as kind of like the starting point to my answer because we got really interested in signatures and what it meant both in terms of just kind of the colloquial sense and also what it meant in the process of learning. So Derrida has this really wonderful paper on the signature event, and it talks about how signatures have this really interesting characteristic. They can be written once and then sent everywhere, like what Emma was speaking about earlier. And it turns out that signatures are also like the second action that we see a lot on blockchains. You have all of these confirmations of transactions that are moving where assets should be, let's say, owned. And then there's this action that you always can take on chain, which is just a sign, a message. And we thought that the confirming of transactions was something that was moving these tokens in a kind of like beginning stages of what we are doing by moving assets on chain, and that signatures might be a better way to think about like where you could go from there. And I think the encouragement in Kernel is really a simple one from the signature side. It's like if you have a signature dish or a signature thing that is uniquely you, then the request is to bring that to the forefront. And if economies, plural, could be designed around these signatures, then we might end up in a more interesting place. And so in that exploration, where we really get, if we kind of whittle it all down, is what types of money might come out of a world where signatures are more valuable than the tokens that are moving around. And so I think that this is a lot of the thought that has come through the community, but the outcomes, they really have to do with the signature things that people have built. So lots of incredible projects have come through Kernel from all around the kind of crypto ecosystem. We've been lucky to have the Future Primitive folks in KB7, and each block there's something else that could be spoken about. But I think this idea that our signatures could be thought about a little bit more is something that I'd like to continue to poke at and to continue to play with.
Great. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Emma, turning to infrastructure, we've been hearing a lot about the promise of these new tools, but what are the essential building blocks that are still missing from today's creator economy, and how is Story addressing that gap?
Yeah, what a question. First of all, I just have to double tap on, I love that this whole conversation, I feel like, is so resonant to the moment and the space and time that we're living in right now, which we have these problems ahead of us that are very big and very daunting, and I think also very exciting. And what I love is that there seems to be this universal re-anchoring to fundamentals and also like very philosophical things. And I definitely heard that in both of the things that you were talking about, and it's really interesting to see that manifested in different aspects of crypto and AI and community. In terms of the creator landscape, my corner of Twitter lately, I'm not sure if we have a similar algorithm, has been talking a lot about the original sin of the internet. And I think it was Mark Andreessen said that the original sin of the internet was not having native internet payments. And I think that in tandem without having a native way to track attribution across the internet is the fundamental reason why we have this crux of a challenging landscape right now for creators. The result of that was we were sold an internet that was free, but we paid in other ways. We paid with our data to big tech companies and AI companies, and we paid with our attention to ads. I think the product of that was the internet that we live in now. Distribution is king, and the penultimate use is to build up some kind of huge audience where hopefully you can then launch a product or do a brand deal, but there's no real native way to pay for the data and assets that are on the internet until now. So I think what the internet needs and what these kind of creator tools need are not a small change. It's a change to the architecture of the internet, and it is embedding native payments for data and IP and attribution into the very fabric of the internet that we use, and that's what we're doing at Story. And the goal is that this then becomes the architecture for an internet that is better for IP owners. It incentivizes people to actually continue creating, and that we're not kind of tied to some of these more like temporal companies that have and then pass on power that you were speaking to earlier.
Yeah, it's not a small job. We've got a big job ahead of us in the next couple of years. So thanks for joining us in this ecosystem. So just for our closing round, I'd just like each of you to share one concrete thing that builders, investors, artists, and members of the public on the internet could do today to participate in building this better internet. Let's start with Jayden.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing you can do to participate in this ecosystem, it's just try things. If there are things that you want to see in the world, try to build them. If there are new ways of doing things that people are doing that look really weird on the surface, try them. See if it works. See if you get that feeling of, wow, this is a way to express my sovereignty on the internet. If there are things that you see people saying, wow, this is really bad, right? Like, you shouldn't put things on chain, that's awful for the environment. You shouldn't use generative AI, it's stealing a lot of things. Form your own opinions on it. Try it and see. See what is under the hood. Learn how it works at a fundamental level. And then form your own opinions on it. And see how the world that you want to create, and the art and the content and anything that you want to bring into the world, how it fits into a world where that exists. Because you can't control what exists and what other people can use, but you can control how you use it and the ways that you can use it as a tool to bring about the world you want to see. So I would say just try things.
Great. Vivek?
I would shout out to Brewster Kahle with this one. The quote in the Kernel syllabus, that one that really stands out to me was, the web was supposed to be a global village, but really, I think as we move forward, there's this thought that a globe of villages might be a more interesting way to go. And this is something that I think we've learned along the way, and it really echoes what Jayden is saying. Because when you're in a village where you have responsibility and you have people that want you to behave and respond in a certain way, your actions differ. And the internet is a place that can feel big and sometimes a place that you can get lost in, but to try to find that village or a few kind of quiet pockets that you can act accordingly within, that sets the preconditions to learn things that you might not expect.
Great. Emma?
This is kind of a hard question to answer. I'm going to give it a kind of esoteric answer and then like a very tangible one. The more philosophical answer is, I just need to double tap on both those things, is just try things and also question where your data is going right now, who it is empowering and who is benefiting from it, and what are the things and tools that you can try to reorient that and rewire that a little bit. I'm also going to steal a concept that my friend Ben Roy, so shout out to Ben Roy, is thinking a lot about right now, which is in a world where distribution is everywhere and content production is as easy as the click of a button, how can you find depth in the communities that you're building, in the products that you are using? How can you kind of reorient from this world that is, very challenging to navigate right now because of that, into something that might be a little bit more, not insular, but focused? The tangible answer is try registering your IP on Story and see what happens, and maybe think about your data and your content through that lens of this ecosystem of what happens actually when you can tie revenue back to the things that you create and the attribution as well.
Great. Thanks so much. So that concludes our panel for today. So thanks, Jayden, Vivek,
Thank
Emma.
you.
Thanks for sharing your work with us. It was great to get the insight. But before we transition to some food and some more drinks, we have a music performance that embodies kind of what we've been discussing today. So I'll welcome Forrest Mortifee to the stage. Forrest is a Vancouver-based musician and creative technologist whose work explores the boundaries between analog and digital, between human and creativity, and agentic possibility. His practice demonstrates how artists are not just users of technology, but active participants in shaping its evolution. So as an example of that, Forrest was just recently accepted to be part of the inaugural Friends with Builders program through the FWB DAO, which I'm really looking forward to see how that develops. But everybody, please join me in welcoming Forrest.
How's it going, everybody? Good. My name is Forrest, and about 10 months ago, I stopped performing. Stopped going on stage, and about 5 months ago, I stopped performing my life on social media. And so this is my first time sharing my own songs since then. And some people were saying, they're like, oh, I'm excited to see you perform. And I'm like, I'm actually not performing. I'm just gonna go vibe. So that's what we're just gonna do. We're gonna vibe for a bit. I've been really prioritizing just like regulating my nervous system. And so we got some bird songs, okay? My mom actually this morning texted me with this little like screen grab infographic that listening to bird songs for 6 minutes actually like scientifically like chills out your somatic system. So I was like, great timing, Mom. Great timing. So that's what we're going to do today, okay? For social media, I'm creating a deeply authentic, deep fake version of myself. So that's what I'm working on in the Friends with Builders cohort, and it's an interesting journey. But for stage hangouts, you get the real me. So let's check out this track. I wrote this song about 13 years ago, walking around my neighborhood up in Dunbar. I was born and raised here in Vancouver. And it's just about noticing what's around me. So I'll invite you to do the same while I share it. I watch the kids at the water park down the boulevard. Life ain't that high. I watch the gardens that my neighbors keep changing with the seasons. They have freedom. I hear the jingle of the ice cream truck wanting to share gifts like a wet kiss. I hear the birds sing on the summer air, rising off the pavement, gliding safely. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever think about it? Think about the way that you see. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever stop to think about it? Come on and stop with me. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever think about it? Think about the way that you see. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever stop to think about it? Come on and stop with me. I smell the blossoms on the blowing breeze as they bloom around me. I'm resounding. Smelt the sticky tar between the cracks, crawling across the sidewalk, hot as fire. I feel the gravel molding to my soles as it makes them tougher. Nice buffer. I feel the sunlight bleach my drying hair as it leads me nowhere. I will go there. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever think about it? Think about the way that you see. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever stop to think about it? Come on and stop with me. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever think about it? Think about the way that you see. Do you ever think about it? Do you ever stop to think about it? Come on and stop with me. About the way you see. Do you ever think about the way you see? Oh, will you ever stop and think with me? Will you ever stop and think with me? Ooh, will you ever stop and think with? Stop and think about the way you see. Come on and stop with me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, y'all. It's nice. I like singing in public. I do. I do like it. Okay, I want to share a little story about how I got into this beautiful space. So I'm into manifestation, right? So it was like the autumn of 2021. Coming out of the pandemic, slowly but surely. I had begun my medical gender transition, but a year and a half prior to that, my voice was changing. I was thinking about the next era of my artistic journey, and I was like, you know what would be excellent? A major label record deal. That would be great. Let's get some funding. So I was putting the tools to work, and I actually manifested a reach out from the A&R of Def Jam. They were like, we love your stuff. We want to sign you. I was like, this is great. This stuff works. So I sent to my lawyer. He's like, yeah, I know this guy. Yeah. Let's move ahead. So I reached back out, and he's like, cool. So we're going to need some money from you to show you to the rest of the team. And my lawyer was like, yeah, it's a fraud. That's a fraud. So I was like, okay, cool. No worries. So I manifested a fraud offer. Don't know what that says. I was like, okay, cool. However, within the same week, a friend of mine invited me to apply to the Friends with Benefits fellowship program. And I did. And I got in. Okay. So that opened up the door to the wide and wonderful world of emerging tech and Web3. And it's been so refreshing for me to have a home here where I can share so much more of myself, where there's so much more of me that's invited to the table than in the trad music industry. And for the Fellowships collection, I dropped my first music NFT. And the song was Prophecy of the Morning Dew. And it ended up being collected by someone who is in this room with us today. And I want to invite C.Y. Lee up to the stage. This is C.Y. Round of applause for C.Y. Yeah. Hi. There's a mic there for you. Thank you, Kage. So, C.Y., how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me out. I'm based in Seattle, so I had a little commute up here just in time to catch the show, so super excited.
So glad you're here. And it was a self-driving car, which I think is a cool little asterisk to that story.
Yes. I didn't actually drive. I didn't get into an accident. It's all good. Technology is for us.
Turns out it's okay, right?
Yes.
We love. So CY collected, and this was like back when we were doing one-on-one music NFTs. So I reached out. We got on a call. We kind of vibed online for a bit, and then we ended up meeting at the first FWB Fest.
Yes.
And CY proposed an experiment to me, whereby I mint my creative process on-chain once a week. And so for the past 2.5 years, I have been sharing my creative process on the blockchain every week. And we moved it to every day about a week ago, which has been really fun for me. And it's been such a beautiful and affirming journey for me as an artist to not just be valued for this final shrink-wrapped master file, but to be seen at every step of the creative process and journey and all the things that never go anywhere. Like, those still matter. Those are still a part of who I am and a part of my story. And so to be seen by you, to want to be seen by you, to have that transparency in my journey has been so humanizing for me as an artist. And your support, not just financial, but also as a homie, as a mentor, and as honestly the best sounding board that I've ever had in my creative journey.
Thank you.
Has just been, it's been life-changing. And so I really just want to bring you up today, CY, and give you your flowers. I got some flowers for you.
Oh my goodness.
Those are for you. Shout out CY.
Yes, I'll throw a few words in there to, I think, add a little bit of flavor. I have been obsessed with the creative process ever since I started playing with Legos, Because as anyone who's played with Legos knows, the fun is not being done. It's being in flow. And I feel like that is something every artist I've ever met who makes it a huge part of their existence lives for. They're not there to create a final product. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to be seen as an artist writ large, the way we've kind of defined these constructs over these, maybe the past century of shrink-wrapped, packaged product. But the beauty is in shots on goal every day, trying to do something to get that energy out of you and manifest it into a little piece of something, which maybe builds into the next thing and builds into the next thing. And I think that's real life. That's real humanity. That's what I think deserves to be shared. And that's sort of the root of these experiments that we've been running, is documenting the process and also seeing the final product. But in the process lies the story, and within the story lies the narratives that glue us together as humans.
That part. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for being here today. And now I'm going to sing Prophecy of the Morning Dew, the first NFT of mine you collected, to you and to all y'all. So thank you. And thank you as well, Jesse, so much for having me today. It's just such a joy to be here and share the stage with the homies, all the homies on stage. So yeah, let's do it. Let's pump the beat a bit. Seasons change in the city, but the ground's the same, gray and gritty. The earth just isn't like that. Our nature isn't like that. We're changing on a steady track. So if you tell me where to go, I won't go. You're trying to change the way I act, but nature doesn't like that. See, this one time I wandered out into the air, and I found it there, my spirit there. I found it there, I found it way beyond all the perfect prisons. Finally I could breathe. In green leaves I can breathe. In green leaves I can breathe. Breathe deeper with me, loved ones, deep as ancient trees. I need you. We need you to fulfill the prophecy of the morning dew. I need somewhere more spacious. I need somewhere untainted. The city can be graceless. No creatures in concrete. Weeds try in a dry heat. Birds fly, but it's dusty and musty. Trust me, I am ready to go. I want somewhere that's fresher, walking over a treasure mine of fine wild vines. Like that one time I wandered out into the air, and I found it there, my spirit there. I found it there, I found it way beyond all the perfect prisons. Finally I could breathe. In green leaves I can breathe. In green leaves I can breathe. Yeah. Breathe deeper with me, loved ones, deep as ancient trees. Oh, we need you. We need you to fulfill the prophecy of the morning dew. That, just like that. Come on and bring it back to me, love. Can we love? It's deeper than the roots can grow, deeper than the sky can snow. Yeah. deeper than the liquid rock, deeper than her wordless thought. In green leaves I can breathe. Bring deeper with me, loved ones, deep as ancient trees. Ooh. I need you. We need you to fulfill the prophecy of the morning dew. Sunshine filters through in bright lines over my mind. I take my time. I'm a star child and I'm on my sunshine filters through in bright lines over my mind. I take my time. I'm a star child and I'm on my sunshine filters through bright lines over my mind. I take my time. Bright lines over my mind. I'm a star child and I'm on. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Nice. Cool. Well, that's it for me. Thanks for vibing with me. Thank you so much for having me, 221A. This has been a joy. Good vibes.
Incredible.
Thanks, Benny.
I don't know about you guys, but I got goosebumps when I was back there. I was like, whoa. So thank you, Forrest, for the beautiful demonstration for our work in this space. And thank you for all our speakers and demonstrators today. And what we've witnessed this afternoon isn't just a showcase, it's traction. From privacy-preserving AI to player-owned economies, from programmable IP to permanent image protocols. We're seeing British Columbia emerge as a global leader in fair data innovation. But traction isn't built by technology. It's built by communities, by conversations like the one we've had today, and the one we will continue during our happy hour reception. I encourage you to connect with the teams demonstrating their work, to explore collaborations, and to imagine what we can build together. The bar is open, the projects are here to chat, and the future of fair data is being written right here in Vancouver. Thank you all for joining us in the building blocks of culture. Let's continue the conversations throughout our time at Web Summit. Thank you so much. A round of applause for Forrest and for everyone else. Thank you. Woo! Awesome. Thank you.